It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and I didn't have my camera ready. Okay, so brief health update on me because this is Wellness Wednesday. Cautious improvement. I'll talk more about this with patrons because I don't like splattering my personal medical stuff all over the internet, especially when Slytherin shirt. That whole shit with J.K. Rowling riled up the stalker I've been dealing with on and off since 2012 again. So, fun times. No segue into this, but if you do want to kick me a couple of bucks right now, it's appreciated. It can be used. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Dealing with a psycho is expensive. And one of the things that I find this stalker is the reason I ended up going into PTSD therapy in the first place. I couldn't take it anymore. I was living constantly in fear, and seeing what I did, going through that experience, and overcoming the trauma and being left with only sort of the knowledge and the wisdom. A phenomenon was called post-traumatic growth, is a really interesting phenomenon. Because when you're in the midst of the shit, right, you're so acutely attuned to threats. That's what they call it, hypervigilance, right? It's a pillar of PTSD. But you're so attuned to threats and you're so avoiding danger that you're not leaning into the good in the world. You're not seeing the kindness in the world. You're hyper attuned, and maybe this is where some of my take on the She-Hulk series comes from, but all you see is the bad, all you see is the users, all you see are the threats, as opposed to also seeing the people who are good people and who are there, and the people that sort of step up and stand by even though they don't have to, like you guys. Like, people have watched my channel and come here for Wellness Wednesday and have supported It's Not Therapy and supported Leanna Cares and supported the Patreon and everything like that. Nobody has to do that. And the cool thing about that is that it is a constant reminder, if you come at it from a mindfulness perspective, it's a constant reminder that there is still good in the world, right? I don't pander. So anybody who supports my content is supporting a healthy amount of disagreement, and the whole philosophy of no two people should agree 100% on things. I think it's very, very important to be friends with people who come from different backgrounds, who have different experiences, who have different views. But you can only do that if you see the inherent good in good people. Not all people, but good people. Really, really seek out the good and learn to recognize the good instead of just constantly guarding against threats. I say, as my dog is scrounging around in my office, "Hey, Loki!" Little slice of life here. "Loki, get out of there!" This is why he's the dog of mischief. One of the shows I really like is Only Murders in the Building. And there was this one character on the most recent season, and she dropped a line that I just thought was so perfect and so indicative of her character and the arc the character goes on. And she said, in sort of one of those self-aware I am statements in media, that, she couldn't trust kindness. That she worked for this incredibly abusive podcaster played by Tina Fey, because, basically cruelty was honesty and kindness was a lie of some sort. And it ends up being very central to that character. And it was sort of an epiphany. Steve Martin movies are great for that. Steve Martin movies and television shows are great for that. That there's such wisdom in little lines like that if you actually go back and piece it together. His writing's so brilliant. But, you know, when you don't trust kindness, you cultivate abuse. When you don't just accept at face value that sometimes some people just do things because it's the right thing to do, you know, that's when you get the potential for exploitation. Because then you have to line up in these cloisters based on opinion and identity group and all that stuff. And you end up accepting a lot of bad behavior because, you know, oh, you better toe the line, you better say the right things, or they'll throw you out, they'll cancel you, right? And that is not healthy. That is not human. That means you are constantly on guard regarding stepping out of line all the time. You are constantly assessing threats. That will make you sick. That will make you physically sick eventually. Everybody needs moments where they can relax. Preferably you have people that you can relax around, because even introverts need a certain amount of human connection. We just don't need the numbers, right? But to an introvert, every single friendship is that much more important, right? And I think the betrayal hits harder when one of those friendships does turn out to be, you know, the person ends up being dishonest. It just hits that much harder because everyone is so much more meaningful. That's not better or worse. It just is. And I know there are a lot of people walking around with the scars of friendships that fell apart. And the problem is that friendships do fall apart. It's a part of life. Sometimes they're no one's fault. Sometimes they are someone's fault. But that was a failure of that relationship, not all of humanity. And I mean, I joke that, you know, people suck and I can't stand people, but the truth is that, and that's just like normies, right? But the truth is that I very much believe in certain people. I very much, you know, have an affinity with underdogs. It's part of what gets me into trouble so much. And while, you know, the average person is quite shallow and quite selfish, and I mean, is a collection of baser urges. And while a lot of people do not value honesty, some do. And I think that if you get too cynical and you get too jaded, you close yourself off from people who are taking risks and are being authentic and are taking the knocks so that they can be honest about who they are. And I think that's why I gravitate towards certain groups. For some people, you know, they use an anime icon to hide behind. But for other people, that's actually a truer expression of their inner natures than a photo of theirs. Like, that's their inner playground, right? They slap a picture of a character they care a lot about. That tells me something about them, right? Not all anime icons are created equal, right? There's one person that I utterly adore. It's like, that is fucking Raymond, man. Not the Rabbids. Raymond, old school Ubisoft Raymond in your icon. That is fucking cool. Standing Raymond. Awesome. You know, stuff like that. Personas like that can be used to hide. Personas like that can also be used to communicate and tell people something about the things you care about. It's all in how they're used, right? And if I've gotten good at anything ever since the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, it's sort of noticing the hallmarks of, burner accounts as opposed to people who are just, using anonymity as a tool because of, the job they do or this, that, and the next thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I could take that risk in certain people's positions. If I was in law enforcement or part of the legal system or something like that, I have never, my personas end up in my work. I don't do well when I'm having to be one person over here and one person over here and one person over here. I I can't keep it all straight. I did that when I was younger, and it's just not me. Um, Maybe because I'm so aware I'm doing it, because of all the theater and the dance and the music and all that stuff. Maybe because I've played so many characters that I need me to be sacrosanct, and I need, to be me. And I would be constantly too afraid of somebody finding out, because I mean that's what happens to me is people tear into your life. If there's the slightest little thing to find, they will find it. And so my deal is that I just disclose things, even the smallest thing. But everybody has to make that decision for themselves, right? And I don't think that people necessarily being anonymous online. I mean, look at Dream, the Twitch streamer, finally showing his face. That was interesting. Because he does kind of look like the guy who played the Sandman. But, somebody like that who wore a mask, but I don't know. It was sort of an interesting reveal. But then you have some YouTubers who show their face all the time, at least physically, but you can't really get a sense of who they are as a person because everything is such over the top persona, shit posting, post irony bullshit. But then you meet enough people in the media, and there are some people who just are that empty. That actually is them. That's not an act. And my camera froze. Oh, that's interesting. Let's see if I can fix this. Let's see. No, it's frozen. Okay. I'm going to continue audio only because that's really weird. The camera is totally frozen. Interesting. So we're going to continue audio only because I don't have time to redo this. The YouTube gods must have been hearing me. But yeah. People find their own ways to express themselves. People find their own ways to be themselves, to feel comfortable. Oh, my camera's working again. There we go. Ta-da. That was weird. People find their own ways to feel comfortable opening up and trusting. And everybody's path to trusting is different. And I can think of very few wrong answers on that one. Like if you're torturing people to see if they'll stick around, if you're asking people to, prove loyalty or hurting them deliberately to control that sort of thing, that's not cool. But because you know, that's not treating people like people. But everything else, slow progress, getting a sense of somebody before you let them know personal things about you, I think that's completely healthy. And I think one of the problems with us still figuring out how this extra technological wrinkle is working in terms of the internet and social media and just knowing so much more about each other is that slowly getting to know someone without, giving out details that can be used to stalk you, like your phone number or, personal contact information or something like that. That's very hard in the real world. And, that's why I led with the stuff about the stalker, because um, I had to cut out everyone who was a part of the circles that she frequented because they were not cutting her out. And some people sort of came back, other people stayed. I keep in touch with certain people, but I don't go to those events. I don't go to those spaces because it's not just they don't care about me. I just really got the sense they didn't care about anybody. They just wanted to not bother with safety issues. And once I see that, I can't tacitly endorse an event by appearing at it or even say I'm going to be there, because I want people who are showing up based on my say so to be able to trust that an event is safe. And when you're doing like real life stuff, that's a consideration, especially in anime and video game circles where there are teenagers, there are minors present. And with cosplay, some of those minors look a lot older than they actually are. I think that's part of the reason that I'm like, if you look under 30, nope. But it's a double-edged sword, right? Because people can form very, very fast online friendships. They can form very, very meaningful connections online. And if they happen to meet somebody online that's in their area that they can hang out with in person, great. Or if they're able to travel every so often, you're not that far, and visit each other, great. But people do need that FaceTime. And the fact that, one is not connected to the other, right? Yes, people use these online tools to stalk and harass people. That's not the average person, right? The average person thinks that's psycho. That's a small subsection of the population that just happens to do it again and again and again and again and again. But you meet one of those people and you're victimized by one of those people. It's hard to recover from. It does rock your faith in humanity, because this is why I push back on creepy. People who do this stuff come across as incredibly charming at first. There's a reason a marker of narcissism is superficial charm, right? And so many, especially online personalities, either are narcissists or copy narcissistic behaviors because that's what does well in the YouTube algorithm. It makes it really hard to sort of lean into awkward and recognize that it's better if someone's not slick. It's better if somebody kind of fumbles over their words, or they're a little bit unsure of themselves, and they don't seem rehearsed, they don't seem smooth, because that's somebody who's got, skin in the game. They're awkward. They're nervous because they care about the impression they're making and they're hyper aware of it, instead of, this persona you end up learning as a performer, where you just go in and sort of learn how to take charge of the room because that's what you have to do when you recognize some people are going to trash you and some people aren't. Most people don't have that training. And so it becomes very hard to know how to spot real kindness and real authenticity. It becomes very hard to trust when someone's being nice. And that's why I like to keep the comment sections, lightly moderated. It's why I do push back on things. It's, why I do sacrifice traffic and follower counts and things like that, just for basic building blocks and cornerstones of things, because I want people to be able to connect through the stuff I do. And you can only really do that if you set the example, right? I feel like I have to take certain risks and I have to let certain, vulnerabilities show so that other people feel more comfortable with not having everything figured out. If that makes sense. I mean, that's deliberate on my part. There's a reason I show up with like my hair still wet and freaking t-shirts and everything. Like, I don't dress to the nines. I don't do all that stuff. That's not the purpose of this. I did pinup modeling and know how to do it. I could do it. It's a lot of fucking work. I don't do that here. That's not the deal. Because I do think that, and this is connected to honor, human beings need to be able to trust kindness. They need to be able to relax and lean into it and trust that not everyone is out to hurt them. Like I said, you can't live that way. Short periods of time, fine. In certain environments, fine. But not all the time. You need places where you actually feel like people care about you for you. So technical difficulties and all, got through this video. Okay, you know what's coming. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching and be well.